A lot of things I'm going to be saying, probably most everything I'm saying today, you all have heard many times before. But I really believe that we're at a place in our time where we have increased levels of vulnerability to our livestock populations in this country. APHIS, I believe, is a great organization with great people to serve American agriculture, and it does a great job with the resources it has. And let me emphasize, with the resources it has. You cannot do everything. And so with that, just kind of keep that in mind. And not only does that apply to APHIS, it applies to states, the industry as well. And so one of the things that Kevin Shea, our administrator, indicated to me years ago that I kind of took to heart. He says, John, it's all about the money. And it doesn't mean that there's not a love for the agriculture and what you're doing, but you have to make a living doing it. And that's part of what I hope to be able to bring out today as well, is the vulnerabilities. So when we talk about agriculture, I want to talk about the past a little bit, the present and the future. In the past, we were an organization of a few diseases, and we cared about foreign animal disease, brucellosis, TB, a few others like pseudorabies, scrape E for years. We were an eradication organization. If you had a new emerging disease come in, I'm not saying we wouldn't do anything, but it pretty much wasn't on our radar screen. When PRRS emerged, we helped a little bit, but we really didn't take much action. So today, it's a whole different world. The needs of agriculture are changing as the industry evolves. The number of large-scale production-intensive farm operations is increasing. However, we must also be able to continue to serve small producers, niche markets, organic producers, deer farmers, aquaculture, and many, many others. They're emerging. Advances in technology continue to change the management of disease in veterinary medicine and practice. We face potential threats beyond disease, such as international agricultural emergencies, natural disasters, agroterrorism. While I haven't seen it, and we've all talked about it, it's still a potential threat. Agriculture is global in scope, and we need to recognize that. And as I talk, I believe that our economic factors sometimes affect the global movement of products around the world. And in essence, unintentionally, we cause other consequences to happen. Our long-standing disease programs still remain a core of our mission. However, we must be ready for emerging diseases today. And these require different approaches. It's not one size fits all. We're not just about disease eradication. We're about education. We're about control and taking appropriate measures for those types of diseases. Additionally, with the recognition of the health of animals, people, and environment, we know that all those are linked, and we continue to be able to emphasize our role in One Health arena and the importance of that. For a long time, we've actually practiced the One Health concept. We didn't call it that. Brucellosis and TB are definitely One Health associated type diseases. Veterinary services, the states, the veterinary community, and the livestock and poultry industries have a rich history of applying the principles of One Health to protect animal and human health. Today, changes in human demographics and behavior, international travel, and commerce provide new challenges in disease prevention and control. For instance, over the past 3 decades, many emerging human infectious diseases have been zoonotic. Examples include SARS, Nipah, Ebola. The evolution and continual change in influenza and the impacts that it's had. A cornerstone of One Health concept is enhanced coordination between the animal, public health, and environmental sectors for disease surveillance, detection, prevention, and control. APHIS and VS has worked with many of these agencies, both internationally from FAO, the OIE, and WTO and WHO on these issues, as well as locally. Many of the things that we use to protect American agriculture are not related to one organization. We have many federal agencies that are involved in the protection, and so coordination among those agencies is critical, such as the Department of Homeland Security and Customs and Border Patrol. So I'd like to address some of the challenges that we're facing. And to begin with, I'd like to talk about the average farm size and number of farms since 1990, or since the 1900s. In 1900, there was approximately 5.7 million farms in the U.S. with 146 acres. In 1997, there's just over 1.9 million with an average acreage of 487. Farming intensity is far greater today than it ever has been. We have 5,000 cow dairies. We have poultry operations that have as many as 3 to 4 million birds on one premises. We have swine operations that are highly concentrated with hundreds to thousands of sows in an operation. All of these things, in my opinion, makes us more vulnerable to disease because of the close concentration of animals. Now, I'm not suggesting we need to change that, but we need to take that into consideration in our economic model when we look at these issues. 2001, many of you have seen this slide before, the UK burning carcasses for foot and mouth disease. They destroyed more than 10 million sheep and cattle. Many of those animals were not affected, that they destroyed. When we talk about the future, this is the type of thing that we can no longer afford to do for many reasons. One, it's not going to be tolerated by the private sector too much. Two, it's a waste of human protein. Three, it's a waste of taxpayers' dollars. We've got to find new and better ways to do this, and we can't do it one country alone. It requires international support for these new ways because of the reaction our trading partners have around the world and us ourselves with these issues. FMD preparedness it's huge, and the way we be prepared is to continue to plan, educate, have trial runs, and continue ongoing. It should never stop. FMD is about 70% of the world has FMD. The North America, Central America, and South America will probably be the first continents that are free of this disease. They have not recorded an outbreak in South America, I believe, for close to 3 years now, maybe a little longer. Doesn't mean it's not in existence there in some way, form, in some of those areas. But they have a real opportunity within the next 5 years to declare the Americas free of this disease. We're not going to bring in foot and mouth disease very likely from trade. People are afraid of that, or claim to be. It's not going to come into this country if it comes in through trade, through boneless beef. It's going to come in the ways that we do not know they exist today. And that needs to be our greatest concern. And that cannot be done by one federal agency, but it's going to require all of us to be able to prevent that from happening. So I wanted to go to the next disease here. I wanted to talk about porcine epidemic diarrhea. This is a disease that came into this country unknowingly to us. It has its roots to China. We're not sure how it got here. In a minute, I'll also talk about porcine Delta Corona. Well, actually, I'll just go ahead and go to the next slide. Both of these diseases entered near or about the same time into the U.S. There's actually been about 4 or 5 viruses that we've identified in the last several years that have origin from China. How did it come in? Well, we've done a lot of studies. We've done a lot of work. We have one possibility through tote bags, but we're not sure. And I pause in saying this because this could be our greatest threat. Because if we're not sure, how do we close that gap? Now, we've brought more attention to this issue, and I'll talk a little bit more about it here in a few minutes, but it's a real concern to me. HPAI, we've done a good job of keeping this out of this country. But guess what? Wild bird populations and movement of wild waterfowl, dabbling ducks, for the first time brought HPAI across the Bering Strait and entered this country and caused one of the most devastating outbreaks that we've ever known in the U.S. in this event. We destroyed over 50 million birds, 43 million layers, 7 million turkeys. This was devastating to the local economies in those areas. Devastating to the people. They're out of work. This goes back, though, to the point about biosecurity. I always thought and to the porcine epidemic diarrhea. I always thought, and I was told many times as a CVO, we've got good biosecurity in the poultry industry. We've got good biosecurity in the swine industry. I think today we have better biosecurity in both sectors. Is it enough? I don't know. But did we have good biosecurity? I don't think so. And if we don't have good biosecurity, and I'm going to add one other thing, if we don't have traceability in all sectors of the livestock population, we're vulnerable to these types of events. Now, in this case, we can't prevent the wild waterfowl from coming across the Bering Strait and bringing it into the North American flyways, but we can prevent its spread within our facilities. Now, like I said, there's been a tremendous amount of effort in this area. So, to talk a little bit about biosecurity, what do you see wrong with this sign? I mean, this sign's great. I don't see a gate on that road. What's to prevent somebody to drive in there and do whatever they want? Is your facilities gated? If you own facilities? If they don't, they should be. And I can tell you, growing up on a farm, ours weren't either. And I suspect my brother-in-law who has a dairy farm in Kentucky today, I know for a fact his aren't either. But they should be. And this is going to require a tremendous amount of education and work among all of us to make sure that we can do everything we can to increase our level of biosecurity in the U.S. Secretary Vilsack has talked a lot in his time in trying to build rural agriculture back. And he had a saying, know your farmer, know your food. I'd like to add something to that. Know your supplier. And know your source. If you do not know the supplier and source of your food, are you sure that it's safe to feed your animals? And many do, but some do not. And this is where I was making reference to earlier about how economics impact these issues. High corn prices, Due to ethanol quite a few years ago, people looked for other sources. Where do those sources come from? Probably outside of the United States. Do you know where they come from? They can come from anywhere in the world where we can trade grain. We bring grain in from a lot of countries you probably don't realize, including China. And I'm not faulting China. I'm not saying their grain's bad. We bring in organic soybeans from China. We don't raise organic soybeans, or at least that's what I've been told in the U.S. We all know, or should know, how we raise organic crops. How do you raise organic crops? What do you use for fertilizer? Manure? Human? Animal? In other countries? Both? We're at risk. Now, people, I've said this before many times, and people have said, well, John, be careful about what you're saying there. I'm not saying this to affect trade and to make everything from the U.S., but I am saying this to make people aware of the potential level of risk for this country, for our way of life, for our agriculture, for our food, for the price of our food. In addition, I believe this country is legislating itself out of agriculture. One of these days, if it continues, we're going to be buying our food from someplace else. And hopefully it will not. Because myself, and I know you all, are here because you love American agriculture, you care about American agriculture, and you want us all to have a safe and affordable food supply. So with that, I think, when we talk about a secure food supply plan and we have these outbreaks, it's also very critical that we have plans that we can implement to make sure that we can continue to move product. In the secure supply plans that we used for the outbreak for HPAI have worked very, very well. And I think we need to continue to work on these plans with the industries, with the industry sectors to make sure that they're ready. But you all need to be ready. Every sector of the industry needs to be ready. It's going to take all of us working together to prevent these things from occurring. If you have an outbreak, heaven forbid, of classical swine fever, foot and mouth disease in Iowa tomorrow, which hopefully would never happen, what are you going to do with the baby pigs that come from North Carolina? Do you expect the federal government to pay for healthy pigs? I hope you don't, because that's not our role. Are you prepared for that? I don't know. So, in conclusion, I'm not trying to scare people, but I am trying to get people to think about their future, about the models we use as it relates to animal health. I know you have to make a living in doing what you do. And with that, thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here.